So with Double or Nothing this past weekend, there still is a ton of AEW news stories to get into today. So let's get straight into the story. Let's continue talking about Mark Henry, because WWE Hall of Famer, the world's strongest man, Mark Henry, was announced as AEW's latest signing this past Sunday at Double or Nothing. It was announced by Tony Schiavone during the show that the WWE Hall of Famer has been signed to All Elite Wrestling. He will serve as an analyst for the AEW Rampage show, but also as a coach and recruiter, talent scout for AEW going forward. Now, we didn't have any more details about this, but today it's all been officially announced, because AEW has officially announced that Mark Henry has signed a multi-year deal as an expert analyst, coach, and scout for the promotion. Henry is set to be on the broadcast team for the hour-long AEW Rampage show, which debuts Friday, August 13 on TNT at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. This is what Mark Henry's had to say about it. Quote, "I've been fortunate to experience a great deal of success in my pro wrestling career. From my own in-ring title runs and creative storylines to identifying and scouting some of the top talents in the pro wrestling business today, to my role as a broadcaster, I've long worked to stay ahead of the pro wrestling curve. The overall quality of professional wrestling has skyrocketed in the past few years, and I've been very impressed by the meteoric rise of AEW. I'm excited to join the broadcast team on AEW Rampage, and I can't wait to work with the incredible roster at AEW." Now, AEW President Tony Khan praised Henry's career and spoke about what he brings to the table for All Elite Wrestling. This is what Tony Khan had to say, quote, "It's an honor to welcome Mark Henry to AEW. Mark came into pro wrestling already established as a legendary powerlifter, and he applied his greatest tools, his cerebral approach to sport and unprecedented work ethic, to become a legendary pro wrestler as well. The mission of AEW is to be the best wrestling product in the world today. Mark's illustrious presence and great wrestling acumen will be tremendous assets to our company and our content as we utilize his esteemed presence not only on screen but also in career development of our stars in the future." Now, Mark Henry is scheduled to make an appearance this coming week on Friday Night Dynamite on TNT, so it'll be interesting what he has to say about that then. But Mark Henry has opened up about the whole story and reasoning behind his WWE departure and signing for AEW too. Obviously, we didn't hear Mark Henry talk this past Sunday at Double or Nothing. He is a regular host of the Busted Open radio show on SiriusXM, and today Mark Henry has explained the whole story behind his WWE departure. And as has been the case with any WWE talent going to AEW, whether it's Paul White, whether it's Chris Jericho, whether it's Miro, whether it's Brody Lee, whether it's FTR, whether it's anyone who's gone from WWE to AEW, the story of Mark Henry going from WWE to AEW is certainly very interesting as well. Many people thought Mark Henry was a company guy. He had been a part of the WWE roster for a long, long time. He joined the company in 1996, signing a 10-year contract at the time. And although Mark Henry hasn't wrestled a match since 2018, he served as a talent scout, made regular appearances or cameo appearances on special episodes of Monday Night Raw, was signed to a Legends contract, but it was revealed at Double or Nothing he would be joining AEW. Now, speaking today on the Busted Open radio show, Mark Henry discussed his decision to leave WWE for AEW and revealed that he did want an office position with WWE, but was turned down. This is what Mark Henry had to say, quote, "My deal was up. It's not something that was recent. I can go back 5 or 6 months, and I wanted a position in the WWE office. I talked to Vince himself, and he said, right up, you're somebody I'll listen to. I was told that there was a lot of cleaning house and cuts that were happening, and there were a lot to come. I'd seen hundreds in the company let go. I felt valuable enough that I wasn't going anywhere. When your deal comes up and the rights come up as to where you're going to go next, I wanted to do more. I always want to do more. If I can't get that opportunity, I have to look for that opportunity somewhere else." Now, when asked about his conversation with Vince McMahon when he informed him of his decision to go to AEW, Mark Henry answered this. Quote, "It wasn't negative. Vince and I have love for each other, more than love, respect. Me calling him and saying him what needed to be said came from a place of a brother telling his older brother, I'm tired of being in the shadows. I feel like someone beneath you is holding me back. If someone is holding me back, I have to go. I feel like I was being held back and not getting what I want. I want to be successful and earn more. Vince said, you know everything you need to know. If you feel like you need to go, I don't necessarily want it, but if you need to go, then go. I know you'll be successful. That's what you want. I'm not going to run from a conversation like that. Nobody will say Mark Henry is unloyal. There were times where I was offered more money and didn't leave. Everything wasn't perfect, but what family is perfect? I had a good experience and learned a lot. I spent more time in production and in the trucks than I did around the ring and in catering. I always had an executive mindset. So that's really interesting, I think. I think it's very interesting what Mark Henry's saying there, because for me, it kind of parallels what the Big Show was saying, what Paul White was saying earlier this year. Now, it's slightly different. Mark Henry is retired. I know he has spoken about recently a desire maybe to get back in the ring and have a couple of matches. He's lost a ton of weight in that sense. And I think people that have been critical of the Mark Henry signing by AEW are being incredibly short-sighted and narrow-minded, frankly. You look at Mark Henry as to what he's offered WWE in recent years, because in recent years, what he's offered WWE is really what AEW are getting here. In recent years, Mark Henry has scouted some of the biggest stars currently on the WWE roster. Names like Braun Strowman, names like Bianca Belair, all of those guys, Chad Gable. I'd spoken to Mark Henry before when Mark Henry was at the London 2012 Olympic Games. Mark Henry has this huge credibility from his time as an Olympian, from his times going to powerlifting meets, from his time going to Arnold Classics, going to all of these sporting events. Mark Henry has credibility, and he has recruited and scouted some of the biggest names in WWE and pro wrestling right now. A lot of these people, Bianca Belair says that she owes her career to Mark Henry. Braun Strowman, as I mentioned, says he owes his career to Mark Henry, because Mark Henry was the one that identified them to these legitimate sporting events, whether they're collegiate, NCAA, as I mentioned, Olympics, strongman competitions, Arnold Classics. Mark Henry attended them, usually with Jerry Briscoe or someone like that, and he recruited them, he scouted them, he offered them or tried to convince them to go to WWE, and they did, and they've gone there and they've made the WWE a lot of money. Mark Henry has a proven track record of being able to find and establish talent. For a company like AEW, that's invaluable. It was invaluable for WWE, let alone for a smaller, less established company like AEW. We have said time and time again here on the channel, and I think loads of people have on social media and in the pro wrestling world, people have said what really will be AEW's success is if they can create original stars, if they can create new stars that maybe haven't been in WWE. You could argue that's one of the biggest mistakes of the likes of WWE and Impact Wrestling over the years, that their problem is that they brought in ex-WWE guys. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially in recent years, because WWE have had a monopoly. I mean, most people at this point have worked for WWE. But when you're a company like AEW, or when Impact was in its prime, and WCW, the important is to create new stars, is to make new stars. That's why Double or Nothing this past weekend was so successful. Look at the younger talent. Look at the talent that maybe wasn't just WWE talent that got over. People like Jungle Boy. People like, I know Kenny Omega was in developmental back in the day, but people like Kenny Omega, people like Britt Baker, people like Hangman Page, all got over and developed during that show. Mark Henry can spot talent. He's been proven to spot talent, and he can make talent for AEW. So getting Mark Henry as a recruitment specialist, as a scout, as a coach backstage, it's invaluable. It's absolutely invaluable. Frankly, I'm surprised that WWE said no to him having an office role. Now, what he means by an office role, he didn't really say. Did he mean literally working in Stamford, Connecticut in Titan Tower? Who's to say that wouldn't work? Who's to say Mark Henry shouldn't be on the creative team? Why not? We probably need more wrestlers on the creative team. Most of the time on this creative team, we have writers from Hollywood or television or something like that. Not that that's a bad thing. Sometimes you need outside perspectives, but sometimes you need people on that creative team that have wrestled, because they know what works and what doesn't work. They know what a wrestler can and can't do. Sometimes these writers from Hollywood or from all of these television productions, they don't know what does and doesn't work in the world of pro wrestling. Pro wrestling, while it may have aspects of theater, it may have aspects of television and films and all that kind of stuff, it's not the same. Pro wrestling lives in its own universe. So who's to say Mark Henry shouldn't have been on the creative team, or shouldn't be at least had a shot in an executive role? And, credit for Mark Henry. He didn't feel that was the right position in WWE anymore, and he left. And I think this is going to be a sign, and I really do, that I think AEW is going to benefit massively. And I'm very surprised that WWE have let Mark Henry slip through their fingers. As I mentioned, Mark Henry, along with Jerry Briscoe, were two of the best talent scouts and people of recruiting people from athletic backgrounds that WWE had, and both of them are no longer with the WWE. So I'm fascinated to see what their recruitment process looks like now. Not that Mark Henry was the be-all, end-all of it by any stretch of the imagination. They've got extensive recruitment departments at the Performance Center in NXT. But I find it fascinating. I find it absolutely fascinating. And it's a big get. It's a big get for AEW, absolutely. So interesting news when it comes to Mark Henry and his WWE departure. Speaking of Mark Henry, a lot of people commented that, of course, Mark Henry and Lio Rush made their AEW debut at the same event on Sunday. Now, these guys do have heat. They do have beef in the past, but it looks like Lio Rush and Mark Henry had spoken backstage at Sunday's Double or Nothing event, apparently squashing their beef from May of last year. Now, as was previously reported, Lio Rush is currently on a handshake deal with AEW. We'll touch on this in a second. He made his AEW debut as the Joker in Sunday's Casino Battle Royale. Mark Henry has signed a contract to work with as coach and commentator with the company. And the WWE Hall of Famer briefly appeared at Double or Nothing and will speak this coming week on Dynamite. Now, in an update, Lio Rush took to Twitter, I believe it was yesterday, and revealed that he and the world's strongest man have had an in-depth conversation at the pay-per-view. This is what Rush had to say, quote, "For those wondering, yes, me and Mark Henry had a long, in-depth conversation last night, looking forward to the future." Now, Mark Henry has not tweeted about meeting with Lio Rush as a recording right now, but he did respond to a tweet from comedian and noted pro wrestling fan Ron Funches, who made a comment about AEW booking Henry versus Rush. This is what Henry had to say back to Ron Funches. "Ron, be nice." Henry has obviously discussed the signing with AEW today, as we just mentioned, but the issues with Henry and Lio Rush go back to May of 2020 after Mark Henry discussed Rush's backstage issues in WWE and the fallout from some comments he made in May 2019 about Rush being broke. The back and forth led to legal threats from both wrestlers and certainly some very disparaging comments from both people, but it looks like the beef is relatively squashed now. I'm sure Tony Khan probably had quite a lot to do with that at the time, it must be said, because there's no way he would have put up with that. So that's certainly interesting and good to know. Chris Jericho has spoken about Mark Henry being signed by AEW as well. This is what Jericho had to say at the post-show media scrum. He said, quote, "Super excited to have Mark in. Mark made a huge appearance tonight, and you're going to hear everything that he has to say on Friday. He has a lot to say, I know, because he never stops talking to me. I think anytime we can have a guy with the experience of Mark Henry, both in the ring and outside the ring, it just helps our company." That's one of the things we need. We needed very much it when we first started. It was basically me and Dustin Rhodes and Dean Malenko as the guys who actually had some decades of experience on live TV. Here we are a year and a half later, and part of our guys and girls are still learning. So having a guy like Mark come in is the same as having a guy like Paul White come in. He can do anything behind the scenes. He can do anything in front of the scenes. He can talk. Maybe one day he'll put the knee pads and boots on and come out and wrestle again. I don't know. Anytime we can have someone like Mark, quality person and quality performer, it makes us a better company. And that's what I agree with. Now, again, when people go to talk about Mark Henry saying, oh, they're going to get him. They're not bringing in Mark Henry to be the AEW World Champion. That's the difference. People will go, well, you're praising AEW for signing Mark Henry, but you criticize Goldberg coming into WWE. If you think that's the same situation, if you realistically think that is the same kind of scenario there, I can't help you. I don't know what you're watching. I don't know if what you think is I mean, seriously, just line it up. What is the difference between Goldberg coming in and defeating The Fiend for the Universal Championship at Super Showdown in 2020 and Mark Henry coming in and being a broadcaster, a color commentator for AEW Rampage? The disparity between those two is ginormous. If you think they are the same, I can't help you. I really can't help you with that situation. It's ludicrous. Now, speaking of Lio Rush as well, we have some updates when it comes to Lio Rush and his contractual situation with AEW. This was some comments that Tony Khan revealed in the post-show media scrum. He said, quote, "I don't have a pen-to-paper deal, but Lio and I have a handshake deal that he can work here and do New Japan both. I think we have something good on a handshake, and I think he's been doing that handshake with New Japan too. And that's kind of what we've been doing, and it's been pretty good. I think that's a good way to work." It's also been reported that Rush is currently signed to New Japan, and New Japan have allowed Rush to work AEW dates. Khan revealed this in his past talks with Rush. This is what Khan had to say, quote, "I think he's going to come back. We'll get to it. I'd like for Lio to come back. He'll also be doing some stuff for New Japan. So he's got some dates booked right now. He was free for this, and I'm going to respect the calendar. So I'm not going to go out and ask him to cancel indie dates and do stuff for us. And he's got a pretty solid calendar, but he was free for this, and I wanted him to come in. I had talked to Lio about maybe coming last year. We weren't able to do it. We did the Casino Battle Royale All Out last year. We weren't able to do it at Double or Nothing because I'll be honest, guys, when I got the roster back together, I didn't have enough people to do a Casino Battle Royale. I threw that show together really quick, and it was one of the best pay-per-views we had done, even with 10% capacity. That's when I had the idea to do the Casino Ladder match, and we did it at All Out last year. So I think that's interesting. That pretty much, he's essentially Tony Khan saying that Lio Rush isn't signed. We might not see Lio Rush for a while on AEW television relatively soon. In reality, when it comes to Lio Rush, it's just a case of he was free. He was available for this date. He was booked. That Joker position's always the surprise entry. Did it fall a little bit flat? When it comes to these surprises at this point with pro wrestling fans, it's almost to the point of the only reason surprises are disappointing now is that I think if a surprise is disappointing, you almost have to blame yourself nowadays, because sometimes with these surprises, it's almost a case of, I think it's like the Christian Cage surprise at AEW Revolution. There's going to be a mystery signing, Hall of Fame signing. CM Punk, Brock Lesnar, and when it's Christian Cage, AEW didn't lie to us there. A Hall of Fame worthy signing, but they're going, disappointing. Well, what did you expect? You let your mind think that it was going to be Brock Lesnar. You let your mind think it was going to be CM Punk. Sometimes that's the problem nowadays, is that with social media and the ability to speculate and the ability to go super over the top and get really wild and excited, sometimes you end up getting these people that just it was never going to be in the end. And with the Casino Battle Royale, there was discussions, wasn't there? Andrade, Nick Gage, Paul White was even speculated, and Lio Rush. Look, nobody thought Lio Rush was going to be it. So that was legitimately a surprise, but I saw some people like, yeah. The only thing I would say is that, he was a big surprise, and he was in there for all of maybe 2 or 3 minutes, then he was gone, which kind of, I don't know. You could argue that it helps the Joker card, because a lot of people think, the Joker's always going to win. So the fact that Lio Rush did come in but was gone pretty quickly, not necessarily a bad thing, because it makes it less predictable in the future. I don't know, but I think that's pretty interesting. But it's good to see that Mark Henry and Lio Rush have squashed their reported beef, and both are happy to work with each other in the future. Let's talk about Jungle Boy. I do want to touch on Jungle Boy briefly. Now, at the post AEW Double or Nothing media scrum, Casino Battle Royale Jungle Boy talked about the importance of his new theme music, Tarzan Boy. The song and the reaction it receives helps him to get calm prior to the matches. Now, Jungle Boy used Tarzan Boy while on the independent scene prior to joining AEW. Now, it was suggested to him that he used the song by a fellow future AEW star. This is what Jungle Boy had to say, quote, "That was crazy to me. That song originally was Joey Janela's idea. I had never heard of it. And he said, you have to come out to this. And I didn't know what it was. And I thought it was like a little bit goofy, but I saw immediately just how people enjoyed it. And it made me fall in love with it. And then, I felt like my time had come to an end when I came here. And it was actually something Tony had mentioned a long time ago. And he was really excited about it. He was like, I'm going to get it for you. I'm going to get it. I was like, all right, if you do, that's awesome. But I'm not expecting it. And I'm not sure exactly how that all works, but he did it somehow. Now, to be honest, I think the Jungle Boy, look, it was absolutely the right call for him to win that Battle Royale on Sunday. The guy is super, super over with the AEW audience. And the entrance, I think, at this point is part of it. Jungle Boy's always been over with the audience. That's irrespective, because he hasn't had Tarzan Boy as his entrance theme for ages on AEW. Certainly did on the independent scene. But he was over anyway. People love the gimmick. He's got a great look. He's a wrestling fan. Coming from the family and the background he does. He doesn't need to be in pro wrestling, but he does because he's passionate about it. And he's a huge fan, and he's good. He's a great babyface. I never could. This is a guy that I think is a bit of a Rey Mysterio in the sense that I could never see this guy working as a heel, because he just would not work. He would not work ever. He is such a babyface, and he touches different demographics in the sense that I think the sort of younger audience loves someone like Jungle Boy, and you need people like that on your roster. You do. For AEW to truly go mainstream and make a lot of money, sometimes you need that younger audience. That's why WWE today is PG. When it comes to a young child today, someone like Jungle Boy is a dream. In the same vein that, Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan in the 80s were a dream because they looked like comic book heroes and they were ginormous. Jungle Boy is far from ginormous of the size of Hulk Hogan or Ultimate Warrior or someone like that. But this is a guy that is kind of like out of a fairy tale. He's kind of out like a comic book, and that sort of, again, the Jungle Boy. It works. And he is over with that AEW audience, especially that younger audience, but even the hardcore pro wrestling fan, they like the gimmick. And the gimmick, obviously, is the Tarzan Boy, and that music not only fits it perfectly, but it's catchy. The crowd cheering to it. Some of the biggest and best characters in the history of pro wrestling, sometimes just as important as anything, is the entrance music and the entrance in general. Whether it's Triple H's guitar riff at the game, whether it's The Rock saying, if you can smell, if it's Stone Cold with the glass shattering, whether it's The Undertaker with the gong. sometimes having that entrance, something that people can sing along to or people can pop to, as soon as that song starts playing and people start cheering along and waving their hands in the air, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. The guy is super over. So really glad that he's using that theme again. And it just goes to show licensed music in pro wrestling works. I wish we saw more of it. I really do. Speaking of Joey Janela looks to be out of action with an injury currently. AEW star Joey Janela is currently dealing with an injury. He took to Twitter this week and announced he was dealing with an injury and is not currently medically cleared to compete. He noted that doctors do not know the severity of the injury yet, but he's hoping to be back in the ring in July. Janela noted he will not be able to wrestle at GCW this Saturday in Atlantic City, New Jersey, but will be doing some commentary. He's also going to miss a match at the June 19 GCW show, but is almost 85% sure that he'll be able to wrestle at the July 10 GCW card from Dallas, Texas. Now, we don't know what the injury is, when he suffered the injury, or any other specifics, but a fan asked him if he was, on Friday, if Hangman Page hit him with a stiff shot during their Dynamite match, and Janela replied, yeah. So, I don't know. Maybe Hangman Page hit him with a rough shot because Joey Janela busted him open by accident. I don't know. But so Joey Janela's out of an injury, which I'm sure Jim Cornette will absolutely be loving. Let's talk about Hikaru Shida. Obviously, Hikaru Shida has been in the news a lot recently, specifically for the Willie Urbina incident, when Willie Urbina was obviously released by AEW after he was caught mocking Hikaru Shida's Asian accent on a hot mic last Friday on the Spanish commentary feed of AEW Dynamite on Fight TV. But Hikaru Shida finally, after basically taking the weekend without mentioning it, she has broken her silence and commented on the matter. She tweeted last night, quote, "Don't want to talk about it, or didn't want to talk about it before my big day. So let me tell you now. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about what other people say about my race because I love it and I'm proud of it. And because I know," and she's referring to Willie Urbina, "is a fool, I don't even feel anger. So don't need to worry about me. Thank you." So obviously Tony Khan commented that he had apologized to Hikaru Shida about the incident, and Willie Urbina is obviously now no longer with the company. I think she's, you know what, I think fair play to Hikaru Shida for saying, look, I didn't want to talk about it before my match because my match was more important. You know, I had a huge, arguably, this was one of, if not the biggest match of Hikaru Shida's career. She doesn't want to be having to focus on some idiot being racist on commentary. He's gone from the company, rightfully so. I don't agree with people saying, well, maybe suspension and all that kind of stuff. If you're suspending him, you're basically saying that that's acceptable behavior. It's not. It's not. There should be a zero tolerance on racism in any form of life. Not just pro wrestling. Any form of life. There's a zero tolerance on it. Absolutely zero tolerance. So I think they made the right call. And good for Hikaru Shida saying, you know what? I didn't want to talk about it. I was focused on my match. I was focused on putting on a show. I'm proud of the match. I'm proud of myself. Good for Hikaru Shida. Absolutely. Speaking of the women's division, Britt Baker has spoken about some of the criticisms of the women's division in AEW. And I think it's very interesting what she said. Now, of course, in the past, people like myself included have criticized the AEW women's division, including Baker herself. She believes the criticism allowed her in particular to improve and believes part of the charm of the women's division is people watching them improve in real time. She said, quote, "It's just a growing and learning process, and it's hard. It's hard to hear it in mass quantities, which I was, but you have to. Even if you're the best in the business, you have to have criticism if you're going to get better. I just happen to have a lot of it, so I got a lot better. The division as a whole, I think most of the criticism at the time was the TV time. Almost none of us had any TV experience. We were all learning and growing together as a division in front of your eyes. And I think that's kind of a bit of the charm and why people are jumping on the bandwagon now. Because it's like, oh man, I remember when Britt Baker couldn't hold a microphone and now look at her. So I think that's why a lot of people are along for the ride. Well, I partially agree on that. Again, the criticism of the women's division for me, and I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but the criticism of the women's division for me had nothing to do with the talent. Nothing to do with the talent. Was the matches good? Were the matches great? Maybe not. Maybe not. But my biggest criticism is that, you know, how can a women's division improve when they get 3-minute matches on TV and it's one match per week on a 2-hour show? It was ridiculous. The presentation has improved. The talent was always there. You had a 17-minute women's match this past weekend at Double or Nothing. You had a kick-ass match on the buy-in as well between Serena Deeb and Rio as well. That's where you have to get to have a quality women's division. Give your talent opportunities to succeed. Talent was never in question. Give them the chance to succeed and they will. Britt Baker is one of the most over characters on the AEW roster right now. That's by giving her talent to succeed, giving her opportunities to succeed. How did she get over in the first place? They gave her microphone time. They gave her promo time. They allowed her to change her character and be a different version of herself. They didn't say, oh, Britt Baker, just smile, go out there, wrestle 3 minutes in a match that's cold, has no story, no storyline, that's it. And people are jumping on the bandwagon a little bit now because they're saying finally AEW is actually presenting their women's division in a way that's acceptable. Not 3-minute matches just once on the show before the main event and then you're focusing on something else. People are actually seeing characters and stories and real matches that last a good amount of time. Multiple female matches on the show. That's what they should have been doing for a long time. People are jumping on the bandwagon, but let's not forget that they should have been doing this a while ago, and there still is way to go for it. There absolutely is still way to go with it. Because you've still got people like Cody Rhodes last year on the Full Gear media call prior to the show saying not every match needs a storyline for the Women's Championship match between Hikaru Shida and Nyla Rose. Look at Cody Rhodes' match this past Sunday. Pretty sure that needed a storyline, a bizarre one of the United States versus the United Kingdom, and Cody Rhodes calling himself the American Dream and coming out dressed like Uncle Sam or whatever he was in what was the worst match of the show and killed the crowd because people weren't sure what was going on. It was the wrong result and it was the wrong outcome, and frankly Cody Rhodes' stuff on AEW recently has been bizarre, but Cody needs a story, but apparently not every match does. Remember, he's saying that, and if that's a person who's in a position of power in AEW, then you've still got a way to go. You've still got a way to go. But I would agree that it is improving, but I think the criticism even now was perfectly justified, and it had nothing to do with talent, it had to do with opportunity. Big difference there. Big difference. Let's talk about Dynamite and the ratings briefly last week. Because Dynamite obviously aired on Friday night, aired on a different night in a different time slot, and Friday's AEW Dynamite episode on TNT reportedly drew just over 500,000 viewers. It was noted on the Wrestling Observer radio show that Friday Night Dynamite show, the go-home episode for Double or Nothing, was down 38% from last week's show, which drew 821,000 viewers on TNT. That puts Friday viewership at around 510,000. Now, this, of course, was the final episode before Double or Nothing. It aired in the special Friday 10 p.m. time slot, due to being preempted by the NBA playoffs. This week's Dynamite show will also air on Friday night. To compare, the Saturday Night Dynamite episode on August 22, 2020 drew 755,000 viewers, while Thursday Night Dynamite on August 27, 2020 drew 813,000 viewers. So, look, and when it comes to this, I saw a lot of people going, oh my gosh, terrible, all this kind of stuff. And in reality, is it a good number? Probably not. AEW would have probably hoped for more viewers, especially going into one of their big pay-per-views of the year. But frankly, and again, I find this sort of funny, people looking online going, look terrible, awful. It's almost like they were on, I don't know, a different night in a different time slot. Oh, you know what I mean? Coming off of an NBA game as well. People trying to look at that and go, look, they did terrible. Oh, rubbish. They did less than NXT this week. It's like, come on, they were preempted on a different time slot on a different day, in a different time slot. Of course they're going to be lower. Monday Night Raw gets like 1.6, 1.7, 1.8 million viewers, probably just because they've been on Monday nights from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. or whatever their time slot's been on Mondays, probably because they've just been on Monday nights for something, like 28 years at this point. That's the only reason they get those millions of viewers. Certainly can't be because of the programming, because that's awful. So obviously, when you change time slot, once you change days and then you go to a later time slot, of course they're not going to do great. Of course they're not going to do great. Plus, obviously, you were coming off Friday Night SmackDown. Now, some people, myself included, thought it was going to maybe be a bit of a lead-in. But frankly, if you've been watching 2 hours of wrestling, maybe you're not interested in watching another 2 hours more till midnight. It's a possibility. There are lots of different factors there. And this is why the move to TBS is good next year, because, look, these preemptions obviously don't do well for AEW. What do you need to have good ratings? You need consistency. You need to be consistently, obviously, delivering a good program, but you also need to be consistently in your time slot and on your day. So that's why they're moving to TBS. So I don't look too much into it, frankly. I know it's not a great number, but whenever any programs move to a different date, move to a different time slot, move to a different network, what do you expect? These are the same people that when SmackDown goes from Fox to FS1, people go, I can't believe SmackDown drew 800,000 viewers. Ugh. Terrible, they're in the mud, SmackDown in the mud. It's like, well, no, they're not. They're on a different network, which less people have. It's like when the first time they moved to FS1 in 2019 for that week, Dynamite beat them in the ratings, and people are online going, see, See, AEW Dynamite, they beat SmackDown. It's like, well, Dynamite aired on Wednesday in its time slot on TNT. SmackDown aired on FS1. It was moved. Whenever any program gets moved, the ratings aren't going to be as good unless they're moved to a better network and a better time slot, which they're not usually because they have to be fit in or squeezed into a different part of the schedule. So I just think people, when they look at that, it's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Finally, some news about some talent being let go by AEW. AEW officials reportedly have chosen not to renew contracts for Awesome Kong and Shana. There was some speculation on Kong and Shana after their profiles were removed from the AEW roster page over the weekend. Now, Dave Meltzer of F4W Online has confirmed that their contracts were not renewed. Shana originally debuted for AEW on October 30, 2019 with a Dynamite loss to Hikaru Shida. She then took some time off from AEW due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but returned in November 2020 with a dark win over Tesha Price. Her last AEW match came on Elevation in early April, a loss to Lio Rush. Where it comes to Awesome Kong, of course, she made her debut at Double or Nothing in 2019, competing in a fatal four-way match with Kylie Ray, Nyla Rose, and the winner and new AEW World Women's Champion, Britt Baker. She worked the Casino Battle Royale All Out 2019, defeated Leva Bates on a November 29 Dark episode, and then defeated Miranda Elise on the December 18, 2019 Dynamite show, and had her last AEW match on Dark in early January 2020, a victory over Skylar Moore. She had a few other non-match appearances and also participated with the AEW Heels brand. It was reported in February of 2020 that Kong had taken some time away from AEW to film Glow for Netflix, but the final season of the show was nixed in October 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. AEW Chief Brand Officer Brandy Rhodes spoke with TV Insider in August 2020 and asked if Kong would be making a return to the company. This is what Rhodes had to say, quote, "She is very passionate about the wrestling business and this business. She is very much still part of things behind the scenes. A lot of the women love seeing her on the heels calls because she is one of the women that really gets on and is a big part of that. Sometimes Dustin holds virtual training sessions on the weeks we're not all together. She's always on for those. She is ingrained in our world. We miss her right now for sure. The pandemic was a problem, but now I think her and the rest of the cast have continued production on Glow. We will see her soon, hopefully. I'm very excited to see that season of Glow because I've been a really big fan of that show." Well, that aged very well. That aged very well, those comments. There's no word yet on why the contracts were or weren't renewed. One would assume probably because Awesome Kong was probably on a relatively big contract because she's a big name and she hasn't wrestled in over a year. And I think I saw a report by Fightful Select basically saying that Awesome Kong couldn't get cleared. She's had a ton of back issues going back for, gosh, at this point, 5-6 years. She's had a ton of back issues. So I would assume that maybe that's probably the issue. She probably couldn't get cleared to compete. And if she's got a big contract, it probably wasn't worth keeping her around. So maybe that's the situation there. But obviously, huge Awesome Kong fan. The work she did with Gail Kim was just incredible in Impact Wrestling back in 2007, 2008. If you've never seen those matches, go back and watch them. They're incredible. Absolutely incredible. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these AEW news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, Impact Wrestling, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Got the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.